Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you for joining today's news conference. Bienvenue à cette conférence de presse. We will start out today with remarks from the Chair of the Council of the Federation, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, followed by remarks in French by the Premier of Quebec, François Legault. We will then take questions from media. It is my pleasure to introduce the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford.
Well, first of all, thank you so much and good afternoon, everyone. I want to begin by thanking my fellow premiers for joining me here today in my hometown of Etobicoke for a fall council of the Federation meeting. And I have to tell you, I've mentioned before, I am so blessed to have what a great team of premiers here at the table, a united team. And last night and today, we had a very open, productive, and positive discussion about the issues that matter to everyday Canadians. We focused our discussion on Canada-U.S. relations, energy security, and speeding up approvals for life-saving medications. As premiers, we reached consensus on a number of key items. We agreed that there's no greater risk to our economy right now than the threat of U.S. tariffs. The imposition of tariffs by the U.S. would be a significant failure on the part of the federal government. To protect workers, we need a full Team Canada approach. That means that the federal government needs to do better engaging premiers as it deals with the threat of tariffs, with regular meetings with the Prime Minister and whoever is on his team that takes a role in the U.S. relations. I can tell you all premiers have been clear that this strategy needs to include a plan to accelerate reaching our NATO 2% target and proactive measures to better secure our border on both sides. Premiers have been briefed on the federal government's plan, but we need more details about how and when it will be implemented. It's critical that the federal government's border plan demonstrates strong and visible action that shows Canada is serious. We agreed to lead a premier's mission to Washington in February to continue to engage with key U.S. lawmakers and cabinet officials once the new administration is sworn in. Premiers discussed the impacts of the proposed clean energy regulations, clean fuel regulations, the draft oil and gas emissions cap, and the federal carbon tax, which is scheduled to increase again on April the 1st, 2025. We agreed that the federal government needs to honor its commitment to work with provinces and territories to streamline regulatory processes to remove duplication so that we can move projects forward. Premiers discussed a new proposal to speed up approves for life-saving medications for Canadians. Canada currently ranks last in the G7 in the time it takes to approve and provide access to medication. This needs to change. Premiers agreed to direct our ministers of health to develop a plan for a new pilot project that would cut the drug approval process by 9 months and get drugs to patients as soon as they receive a positive funding recommendation from Canada's drug agency. This proposal would cover 7 to 10 cancer drugs each year that have been approved by Health Canada through Project Orbis. Negotiations would begin immediately to determine the final list price, with manufacturers accepting specific obligations around cost and coverage. This proposal only works if drug manufacturers come to the table in good faith and with a desire to help. We look forward to receiving an update from the Ministers of Health in the new year. Look, it's been a very, very busy day today. Today has been an important reminder of how critical it is that premiers work together. No matter what's happening in Ottawa, all of us premiers will remain united as Team Canada to provide steady and stable leadership during these uncertain times in Ottawa. Families, workers, businesses, communities are counting on us to do so, and we'll be there for them. I want to thank you again, and I'm going to pass it over to Premier Legault, and Premier, you can translate that into French.
Merci, Doug. je vais essayer de résumer en français, effectivement, ce que Doug vient de dire, mais je veux commencer par remercier le premier ministre de l'Ontario, Doug Ford, pour son accueil depuis hier. On a été très bien reçus. Merci beaucoup, Doug. Depuis hier, on a eu des bonnes discussions entre les premiers ministres des provinces et des territoires sur 3 sujets: les relations Canada-États-Unis, la sécurité énergétique et la santé. Je vais me concentrer sur le premier point. Vous pouvez comprendre là, que c'était celui sur lequel on a passé le plus de temps. D'abord, c'est important de se dire qu'on a un consensus, qu'il n'y a rien de plus important actuellement que de travailler à ne pas avoir les tarifs le 21 janvier. Et donc, on veut collaborer avec le gouvernement fédéral et on souhaite qu'il y ait des réunions très régulières avec le gouvernement fédéral, donc entre le gouvernement fédéral et les provinces. On a aussi tous convenu que c'est un élément important que le gouvernement fédéral répète son engagement d'atteindre 2% du PIB pour le financement de l'OTAN. On sait que c'est une attente importante de M. Trump. On pense aussi qu'à court terme, c'est important, puis on va peut-être le voir dans la mise à jour un peu plus tard cet après-midi, mais c'est important qu'un plan soit déposé par le gouvernement fédéral pour sécuriser les frontières. On espère que ce plan-là va être chiffré. On souhaite aussi que le gouvernement fédéral renforce les visas parce que ce qu'on voit actuellement, c'est que les immigrants illégaux arrivent au Canada comme des supposés touristes, mais passent la frontière ensuite de façon illégale. Donc, il faut être plus exigeant sur les visas. J'arrêterai là, puis bon, ça va nous faire plaisir de répondre à vos questions.
Merci, Monsieur le Premier ministre. We will now move to media questions, starting with the media who are present, followed by questions for those attending virtually. For those joining by phone, you may press *1 at any time to join the queue to ask your questions. For journalists who are present, please come to the microphone to ask your questions. Please state your name, your outlet, and direct your question to one premier. You will be limited to one question only. First question.
Bonjour à tous, Mathieu Goyer de Radio-Canada. Good afternoon, everybody. Ma question est pour le Premier ministre Legault, mais all other premiers are welcome to answer. À la lumière de ce qui s'est passé à Ottawa aujourd'hui, la démission de Chrystia Freeland, le gouvernement Trudeau qui est de toute évidence fragilisé, est-ce que M. Trudeau a vraiment un mandat présentement pour négocier avec Donald Trump et est-ce qu'on a besoin d'élections fédérales pour que le gouvernement fédéral ait bel et bien un mandat en poche pour négocier avec M. Trump?
Ce qu'on a convenu, c'est pas à nous à décider ce qui se passe à Ottawa. C'est aux députés qui sont à la Chambre des communes et nous, on va travailler avec l'équipe qui est en place.
Rob Benzie from the Toronto Star. This is for Premier Ford. Premier, I understand you spoke to Chrystia Freeland, who you have worked very closely with over these past 4 years, specifically on the pandemic, EVs, many other joint initiatives between Ontario and the federal government. Just wondering your thoughts on her sudden departure. What does this chaos in Ottawa, political chaos in Ottawa, say to you guys as you're trying to develop a plan to deal with an existential threat from Mr. Trump's tariffs on January 20th?
Sorry, I did speak to Chrystia, and I just wanted to thank her for her service. She gave me a call. I did put her on speaker with the rest of the premiers. We have a good relationship with Chrystia over the years. I just want to wish her all the best. But as a country, we have to project strength, unity, and you said the word, I didn't, but I'll repeat it. It's chaos right now up in Ottawa, and it's time that what we do every single day, the premiers, we step up and we'll make sure that we tell the world that there is stability here, there is certainty here in Canada, and by all means, it's a great place to invest in any of our provinces or territories. That's the message to the world, and we have a great group of premiers, very bright individuals around the table here.
I just add to that just a moment, just on behalf of myself and I think all others at the table, just to thank Doug for chairing these meetings here today. This is an important and effective table. The Council of Federation table is the one other place in Canada where we come together collectively to represent all Canadians. All Canadians. And so, you know, in times of maybe some troubled times with what we see happening in Ottawa, I just say a very sincere thank you to Doug for bringing this table together here today, for chairing the meetings here today, and to you know, really looking ahead as to how, you know, we can support federal engagement when it comes to you know, our trading partners, in particular the United States of America, over the course of the next while, working together as a Council of Federation to represent collectively all Canadians. But thank Doug for leading that conversation on behalf of the Council of Federation today.
Adrian Gabriel, CTV National News. Question for Premier Ford and anyone else who would like to chime in as well. As premiers, do you have confidence in a Trudeau government to lead Canada into a tariff war that is knocking on our door?
Well, the way I can answer that, we're going to be at the table. All the premiers are going to be at the table, making sure that we move forward in a very constructive way, a very collaborative way, to protect our provinces and our territories and our entire country from coast to coast to coast. That's our job. We're ready. And we'll rise up to the occasion. I can promise you that. Great group of premiers. I can't stop saying that. I want to thank Scott too, as one of the senior statesmen. I think he's been elected longer than any of us, and he's shown leadership over the years from the day I met him, moving forward, like other premiers here at the table. So, thank you.
Hi, Premier Al Sweeney from CHTV in Hamilton. This is for Premier Ford. Premier, after talking to the other premiers here, are you backing away from your position that Canada and Ontario should be ready to retaliate against the United States if they impose a 25% tariff on goods?
Well, we're not backing away whatsoever. We have to stand up for Canadians. We have to stand up for each jurisdiction. Each jurisdiction has their different needs and concerns. I understand that. But as a country, we can't be rolled over. We have to stand up and protect Canadians as a whole. And that's what we plan on doing. We're going to work together to make sure that we support each jurisdiction, each region of the country, because it is very, very different across the country. But I can tell you one thing, what we do believe in the federal government making sure they meet their 2% NATO commitment. We also agree on making sure that we secure the borders. And we also agree that we need to keep an eye on China shipping in cheap parts in through Mexico, slapping made in Mexico stickers on and shipping them up through the U.S. and up to Canada, costing Canadian and American jobs. Folks, it's pretty simple. We need to take care of those three issues, and then we can move forward on talking to our American counterparts, which, by the way, we all have. All of us around this table have been reaching out to our U.S. counterparts, and the message has been very clear. Similar to the article in the Wall Street Journal about the CEOs, largest CEOs in the U.S., saying tariffs will hurt Canadians and they'll hurt Americans. And with cheap Chinese imports, again, it will hurt Canadians and Americans.
Good afternoon, Premiers. Kate McKenna from CBC News. This question is for all premiers, but perhaps I would especially like to hear from Premier Moe and Premier Smith. Today in Chrystia Freeland's letter, she noted that tariffs are the most important threat facing Canadians. And then she went on to say, that means working in good faith and humility with the premiers and the provinces of our great and diverse country and building a true Team Canada response. Why do you think she would include that in her resignation letter? Do you feel that that was how the federal government was approaching these discussions?
Yeah, I would say I talked with Chrystia Freeland late last week as well, and I've appreciated always working alongside her. She was our engagement point at this table for a number of years. But I would also say that, and I won't speak for Chrystia, but I'm certain that she would say she recognizes the importance of this table alongside whoever our federal government is. This is a table that collectively, like a federal government, represents each and every Canadian from coast to coast to coast in the nation. And Premier Ford today, I think, brought together not only an opportunity for us to have discussions around our current relationship as Canada and the U.S., the United States, but also brought in 3 former ambassadors to the U.S. to provide us some guidance. We had Frank McKenna, we had Gary Dewar, and we had David McNaughton. And that was, I think, a very engaging discussion and some very astute advice provided to each of us here. And so, you know, as we move forward, and Premier Ford had said this, tariffs are not good for anyone in North America. And to get into a broad-based tariff war for Canadians with the United States of America is not good for any of the jurisdictions, I think, that are represented up here. And so there's some work for us to do between now and January the 20th. Do alongside our federal government, to do as a Council of Federation to engage, but also to engage as subnational leaders as well. And that work is really to engage with the contacts that we have collectively. That work is to work with the federal government, whether it be on border security, whether it be on you know, immigration policy, whether it be on you know, any other trade concerns that are maybe being raised by our largest trading partner and the incoming administration that is coming in with the Trump administration and the changes in the Senate and the House. And so we have a lot of work to do on the engagement front. I think we have a lot of work to do as Canadians on the engagement front between now and January the 20th. And I would say that the goal for myself as a subnational leader, and I think collectively, probably the goal for everyone at this table is to do that all we can to avert any implementation of tariffs. What we do in North America in providing energy, food, and manufacturing security, we do that alongside the Americans. We don't do it for them. We don't do it to them. We do it alongside them. We build cars together. We provide energy security. We provide Alberta and Saskatchewan will provide, you know, raw commodity products into the U.S. where they're added value and then sold back to North Americans and other places around the world. And so we really do work well with that integrated economy across the 49th parallel. And so the goal for the engagement that Saskatchewan's putting forward is for us to not have tariffs implemented on January the 20th, and if they are, for the very shortest period of time possible. And we'll do that through engaging and really telling the story of the collective advantage we have by not going down that road. Danielle?
Yeah, and I would say that in our communique, we all agree that the goal will be to avoid tariffs being implemented altogether. I think what I've seen of the 2 meetings that we had with the Prime Minister, with Ms. Freeland, as well as with Dominic LeBlanc, is that we had a really good constructive conversation to identify the things that are the trade irritants with the U.S. It's part of the reason why we as a group have identified border security issues around fentanyl, around gun smuggling, human trafficking, illegal migrants. It's why we've identified the 2% NATO commitment, and it's why we've identified that not allowing China to use our country as or Mexico for that matter, as a backdoor to put cheap goods into America. That came from a collective conversation that we had, and I've been pleased to see that the Prime Minister was in the process of working through a plan for the border. I guess we'll see whether or not that plan gets released today or not. There's a little bit of uncertainty. Why it is that she may have written that in her letter is because of the uncertainty that we're seeing. I'm hearing it as a please keep going, premiers. Please keep meeting. Please keep reaching out to the governors. Please keep reaching out to your American contacts, because we can't afford to lose momentum. If our collective goal is to avoid tariffs, we're only a month out from that or thereabouts. And so I would say that the premiers at this table offer that continuity in being able to maintain that pressure and maintain that push with our American counterparts. And I think we're all going to be committed to doing that.
Hi, Tessie Sanchi, Hill Times Health. Premier Ford, I'd like to ask you about this proposal to speed up approvals, getting medicines into Canadians' hands faster. You mentioned that you'd like to see health ministers develop a proposal. What specifically can you do from the government side to actually speed up that process? Is there any ideas that you have at this point? And then if any other premiers wanted to jump in about some of the other healthcare priorities discussed today.
Well, let's look at the root cause and the problem that in the G7, we're the slowest out of the G7 to get these life-saving drugs approved. We want to make sure that we get them to market as quickly as possible, and the ministers of health will be negotiating a cost with these drug manufacturers, but we can't be left behind when countries like the United States get approval up to a year earlier than Canadians do. So that's our goal at the end of the day, to make sure that we have these life-saving drugs for all Canadians across the board. So that's our goal, to make sure that we keep up to our counterparts in the G7. I always believe Canada should be #1 in every category, not #7 in the G7.
Mark McAllister from City News. A question for Premier Ford, Premier Smith, perhaps Monsieur Legault, if you're able to address this as well. You speak of sitting up here as a united front and how important that is, but at the same time, making sure that you're working within your own jurisdictions. So I'm just trying to clarify exactly what that means, working together, but at the same time, protecting the provinces you represent. Mr. Ford, you obviously had said that you were prepared for counter tariffs. Premier Smith, you said not necessarily, so I just want to clarify that if you could.
Well, I just want to clarify, we're a strong group of premiers. We are united. Depending on where you are in the country, there's certain issues that affect your region more than other regions, and we're going to continue working as a group of premiers as these negotiations move forward, and we're just at the beginning of them. Actually, they haven't even started until January 20th, when President-elect gets sworn in. But I respect my colleagues. I always will. If they have issues, then we work through them. And I just believe in negotiating through strength. And there's a lot of commodities, no matter if it's a critical minerals or electricity in Ontario, or again, oil, crude oil, and certain other parts of the country, be it Alberta or in Newfoundland. Everyone has something to bring to the table, and that's what's important. It's what our strengths are, that when we negotiate with the President-elect Trump, there's a lot at the table here, and again, the only people that get hurt on these tariffs is Canadians and Americans. And do you know who wins? China wins. And we need Canadians winning and Americans winning, not China.
I would say that one of the things that collectively we've agreed on is to address the issues that have been raised by the American president and to put forward a credible plan for addressing them. So I think that that's one starting point. But what I liked about Frank McKenna's comments today is he said, go in from a position of strength. We have a very strong argument to make that our energy makes prices cheaper for Americans on gasoline. The electricity coming from Eastern Canada makes their power prices cheaper. There's a special critical mineral that can only be found in British Columbia that is going to make British Columbia very important to the Americans on that front. Our manufacturing of vehicles, those parts go back and forth across Canada and the U.S. border 7 or 8 times before a car is assembled. So every single one of us have an argument that we can make about how this integrated nature of our economies benefit Canadian and American consumers. And so those are the kind of arguments that we are making to our counterparts through the media, and also at the same time addressing the issues that have become a trade irritant, all for the goal of trying to avoid tariffs on Canadian goods altogether.
Yeah, what I would say is that Mr. Trump was very clear. He said, if you don't solve your problem with the border on January the 21, I will put 25% tariffs on all exportation from Canada to U.S. So I think that our priority must be to settle the problem on the border. And we still have some problem, at least in Quebec. We still have some people coming at the airport and then moving illegally to United States. So I think that our priority until January the 21st must be to make sure we settle this problem and don't have the 25% tariff on January the 21. That must be our priority.
It's pretty...
Oui, ben, ce que j'ai dit, c'est que M. Trump a été très clair. Il a dit, si vous ne réglez pas le problème des frontières d'ici le 21 janvier, je vais mettre en place un tarif de 25% sur toutes les exportations de produits canadiens aux États-Unis. Il y a encore des problèmes à la frontière, entre autres au Québec. Il y a des personnes, entre autres, 60% des personnes viennent de l'Inde, arrivent avec des visas de touristes et s'en vont aux États-Unis de façon illégale. Il faut régler ce problème-là. Il faut investir de l'argent et des ressources humaines pour ne pas avoir les tarifs de 25% le 21 janvier. Ça devrait être notre priorité, notre seule priorité d'ici le 21 janvier.
You know, it's pretty clear what the president asked for, and it's pretty simple for us to fulfill that with the federal government's support. Secure the border. Talking to CBSA officers, they need 2,000 more people. Our CMP have seen back-to-back cuts. They hire 1,100 a year, as Ontario is hiring 2,000 police officers and growing. Support your RCMP with funding, support your CBSA with funding. We shouldn't have a little local police service in Windsor, Ontario, patrolling one of the busiest border crossings in all of Canada. They have, and it's not CBSA's fault, they need to be funded to get the boats in the water to make sure that they patrol the river coming into our country. That's not a big ask. Let's get it done. We're there to support them. But this is the federal government's responsibility. We shouldn't be in this position. They should have the border secured.
Nathaniel Dove, Global News. Premier Moe, you had previously called for a federal election to take place. That was before we lost, or the federal government lost 2 ministers, including on the day of the fall economic statement, the finance minister. I'm curious, my question is for all premiers, if you can raise your hand, if you believe there should be a federal election soon.
Well, you know, listen, and Doug, you maybe have more to add as a Council of Federation. You know, we come together as a Council of Federation to work on where we can find consensus, and where we can make decisions and move forward on behalf of, as I say, collectively we represent all Canadians, and this is one of the few tables, the other being the federal government, that I think arguably would be able to say that. And so the importance of this table today, given where our nation is, I think could never be more overstated, that it is so very important for each of us to come together and to work together towards those consensus-based decisions that are in the best interests of all Canadians collectively. And so we'll each speak as subnational leaders, and I'll speak as a subnational leader from Saskatchewan. However, today, I'm here as part of the Council of Federation and part of a group of premiers that are working together towards what is in the best interest of all Canadians, and working together to ensure that we are advancing what is in the best interest of all Canadians.
Next question.
I didn't see any hands. It's Colin DeMello from Global News, so I'll ask it a different way. We know that there's going to be an election in 2025. The federal Conservatives are saying it might be important to have that election before U.S. President Donald Trump takes his oath of office on the 21st. Just looking for some responses here, if you think an election before that moment in time is important, or is it okay for that election federally to happen after that?
Well, I think, in my opinion, I'm speaking for ourselves here, not as the chair. That's going to be up to the federal government to decide if they're going to call an election or not. Really, it's up to the NDP if they're calling the election. That's where the power lies right now, and they'll make that decision, and we'll see what happens from there. So I'll stay out of that, because the next question you'll ask me is when am I calling the election?
You knew me too well, Premier Ford. That is actually my question. There is so much talk that tariffs have changed the game here. So does this make you more likely to head to the polls early?
Well, my number one focus is making sure that we take care of Ontarians, make sure we look at the cost of living and the economy and healthcare. Those are the top three priorities right now. I have a responsibility as chair of the Federation as well to continue moving forward on this trade deal. And again, I'm fortunate to have a talented team, not only down in Ontario as our caucus, but as the chair of Federation, having everyone to the right and everyone to the left of me. So we have a really strong team, and we'll be involved in the trade deal as we move forward.
Hi there, Alan Hale from the Trillium. So I guess what I'm gathering from here is that the United Front you guys are putting up is the idea that if we address the border and the NATO spending, then Donald Trump will be satisfied and we will avoid tariffs. But Mr. Trump has a very long history in business and politics of pressing his advantage. If he is not satisfied by fixing those two issues and decides to ask for more, and I would like to direct this to Premier Smith, but also to anybody else who wants to answer. If he is not satisfied and he goes ahead with tariffs, even though you fix the border, or even you increase defense spending, how can you assure Canadians that we will have a united front of premiers rather than several different provinces all looking over after their own individual interests?
I guess a couple things I'd say is that I don't know whether or not there will be a federal election, but what I do know is that a lot of the premiers at this table have a secure mandate. This is a stable table, and I think it's up to us to continue offering that continuity if there is that uncertainty happening at the federal level. And I'll just also express gratitude for Doug's leadership on that. He's been tremendous in pulling us together a number of times. I would say that tariffs are their own punishment. So when Americans start seeing a 25% increase in the cost of all their goods, and the stock market starts reacting, and people are paying $1 a gallon more at the pumps, I suspect that's going to be persuasive in its own right. We're trying to avoid that outcome, but I can tell you we're right in the middle of a GST holiday of 5%. And adding 25% to the cost of all Canadian goods would also create an affordability crisis here. If we end up with 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods, 25% of tariffs on all American goods, the beneficiary of that is China. So I would say that this is the reason why, as a table, we are all committed to trying to avoid getting tariffs instituted altogether, and making the very strong case to Americans that because they have such a reliance on commodities from us that fuel their ability to have a robust, vibrant economy, creates jobs, we mutually benefit from it, I think we've got a really strong case to make, and I'm committed to continuing to make that case.
If I could just jump in there and build off what Premier Smith is saying, I do want to thank Premier Ford for his leadership. I think as we head into the new year, clear, strong communication is essential, and I think Premier Ford has brought that. So I think he's done a great job not only hosting us, but also in chairing this meeting here. I also want to just put on the record that I thank Chrystia Freeland for the time that we've had to work together. It's been very positive and collaborative, and so certainly want to publicly thank her in front of the people of Canada. On a day like today, I would hope that Canadians are reassured by looking at this table and seeing that the premiers are unified. We're unified in investing in the military. We're unified in cracking down on drug trafficking. We're unified on having a secure border. And the reason why we have that unity on these priorities is because if we as Canadians come together to invest in the Canadian Armed Forces, to protect our border, to rid the scourge of toxic drugs in our communities, what's the downside? We take action on those things, we're serving people in our own communities, our own constituents, and we're doing so at a time where that could help strengthen our most important trade relationship. It could help protect your jobs, whether that's in Manitoba, Ontario, Alberta, any of the provinces or territories. And so I think that this message of unity is particularly important, and I just want to say to Canadians that the premiers are ready to lead. We're willing to do our part, and having a unified group here with Conservatives, New Democrats, Liberals, even a couple of nonpartisan premiers, hopefully that gives you a sign of hope at this time.
Hi there, Barbara with iPolitics. My question is for Premier Ford. So in her resignation letter, Chrystia Freeland said that the government should end costly political gimmicks. She was referring to the rebate checks they were sad to send out. And this is a policy that your government suggested even before the federal government did the same. So what do you make of her comments, and how do you feel about this policy?
Sorry. Well, again, that's going to be up to the federal government to decide if they're giving, tax breaks or cash or whatever they might give. That's going to be up to them. I just believe, it's not our money as a government. It's the taxpayers' money. And that's why we're giving a $200 rebate check to all Ontarians across the board. We saw more revenue come into the province, and we sat back at Cabinet and thought, where did this come from? It came from the people of Ontario. They deserve it, but there's a mindset in governments in general, be it the federal government, I'm not speaking for the provincial and territorial governments or municipal governments, they believe it's their money. It's the taxpayers' money. Put it back into the taxpayers' pockets. They're going to go out, they're going to spend it, they're going to stimulate the economy. As simple as going out and maybe going for dinner that you might otherwise not be able to, or buy a pair of sneakers for your kids or clothes. That's how we stimulate the economy and put more money back into people's pockets. People are hurting right now. And the last thing they need are being taxed to death from all three levels of government. I've never raised a tax since 6.5 years, and I will never raise a tax on the backs of people or businesses.
Next question.
Hello, everyone. It's Rob Ferguson, Toronto Star. Mostly for Premier Ford, because I know he's always working his phone, but anyone who else would like to chime in is welcome. I'm wondering, given what's happened today in Ottawa and the chaos you're concerned about, has anyone reached out to any of your U.S. counterparts? What kind of message did you send, and what type of response have you got back?
Well, we haven't reached out today because we've been busy working last night and today, but on a daily basis, we're reaching out. I'll speak for myself. I'm speaking to governors and senators and Congress people every single day, numerous ones. And then the other people that can play a big part in this are the CEOs of these large companies around the country that their world headquarters is probably located in the U.S. Not all of them, because we have a lot of large companies, especially in the auto sector, that their headquarters are here in Canada and Ontario, but have facilities down there. But they have a duty to step up and make sure the message is very clear to their U.S. counterparts. This will hurt Americans, this will hurt Canadians, and they have to make sure that they lobby hard to the U.S. federal government and really give them the reality check that this is not going to benefit America, it's not going to benefit Canadians if these tariffs go forward. Why don't we put a Fortress Can-Am together? And we're unstoppable if we put a Fortress Can-Am together with our critical minerals and our natural resources and our food and agricultural products and our manufacturing might against the rest of the world. Again, China is our threat, not Canada, not the U.S.
I'd like to jump in on what Premier Ford was saying there, because I think it highlights a key point, that this is a really strong table, and part of that strength comes from the relationships that everyone here has with governors, counterparts in the U.S. And again, credit to Premier Ford for inviting the Business Council of Canada to come see us last night and hear from folks there who also have significant relationships with CEOs in the U.S. and other governors and senators. We are bringing bringing everything we have to this to make sure that we are protecting Canadians from the tariffs that have been suggested. And that effort is made stronger by everyone at this table who is working together, using our connections and our relationships with governors, with business, and coming at this from every angle, an angle of border security, an angle of investment in NATO, an angle of leveraging our economic relationship that has been heavily interdependent and tied together for a long time. And I just want to take a moment as the new person in the group who comes to this with some fresh eyes and fresh ears to reassure Canadians at what a collegial group of people this is, who work in an exceptionally collaborative way with frank conversations that we had today. There was a lot of interchange, a lot of compromise and collaboration in these conversations, and I've been extremely impressed with the nature of the collaboration of the people around this table, and am reassured that Canadians are being extremely well served by their premiers, who are going to work together to defend Canadian interests and work with our partners in the U.S. to ensure our economy is well protected, as well as our borders and our military.
Great comment, Susan, and welcome aboard to the family.
Good afternoon, Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News. My question is for Premiers Smith and Holt. I'm wondering if you can share how you reacted to Chrystia Freeland's news, and specifically her statement saying the only viable path for her upon learning that the Prime Minister was going to move her from her role as the first federal female finance minister was to leave cabinet. And do you believe that Justin Trudeau is a feminist as he says he is?
Well, I'll take the opportunity to join my colleagues in thanking Chrystia Freeland for her work as our first female finance minister. I had a very short opportunity in these last 40-some days to engage with her, and appreciated very much her candor and her accessibility in the work. I think she had a difficult choice to make, and she made it, and I want to recognize the work that she did for Canadians, and I look forward to working with my colleagues at this table to make sure that we're advancing the interests of Canadians at every chance we get in partnership with the federal government.
Well, all I would say is that Alberta has had 3 female premiers, and there hasn't ever been a female leader of the federal Liberal Party. So I would say that perhaps somebody who declares himself to be such a supporter of women, maybe this is an opportunity for them to demonstrate that.
Bonjour, Mylène Crête de la presse. Ma question est pour M. Legault et je vais la répéter en anglais pour les premiers ministres qui voudraient répondre. Une des raisons évoquées par Mme Freeland pour sa démission, c'est de dire qu'il aurait fallu que le gouvernement fédéral se garde une marge de manœuvre fiscale au cas où les tarifs de 25% allaient être imposés au mois de janvier. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de ça? And I'll repeat it in English. Ex-Minister Freeland said that one of the reasons for her resigning is that Canada should have kept some fiscal room in case the 25% tariff come to fruition. So I was wondering what you thought of those comments. D'abord, M. Legault.
J'ai pas de commentaires là, sur les commentaires de Mme Freeland. Il y a toutes sortes de façons de stimuler l'économie, les infrastructures. C'est une demande qu'on fait depuis longtemps au gouvernement fédéral. Je pense que c'est le temps actuellement, avec les risques qu'on a au-dessus de la tête, d'investir dans les infrastructures. Mais bon, j'ai pas vraiment de commentaires à faire sur sa déclaration.
Peut-être je peux ajouter, moi je pense que c'est vraiment important d'avoir un focus sur cet enjeu parce que c'est un enjeu incroyablement important pour notre économie et chaque Canadien. Alors on a besoin d'avoir un gouvernement fédéral qui a un focus sur cet enjeu et qui est préparé à utiliser leurs ressources pour assurer qu'on peut protéger notre économie et les Canadiens. Alors je comprends le point que ministre Freeland faisait, que on ne sait pas qu'est-ce qui va arriver dans les prochains mois, mais on a besoin d'avoir chaque outil possible pour défendre ses intérêts, nos intérêts comme Canadiens, contre ces tarifs. Alors, c'est vraiment important d'avoir de la flexibilité fiscale et l'opportunité d'agir dont nous avons besoin pour protéger les Canadiens.
Bonjour à tous, Thomas Laberge pour la presse canadienne. Ma question est pour M. Legault. M. Legault, vous avez déjà demandé au Bloc québécois de retirer sa confiance envers le gouvernement de Justin Trudeau. Là, aujourd'hui, c'est Mme Freeland, une ministre très importante, qui lui retire sa confiance, notamment parce qu'elle n'est pas d'accord sur la manière dont il envisage la question des tarifs de M. Trump. On vient d'apprendre que le NPD veut aussi retirer sa confiance au gouvernement Trudeau. Qu'est-ce qui fait qu'aujourd'hui, vous avez confiance dans le gouvernement Trudeau?
D'abord, rappelons la petite histoire. À l'époque, il y avait une possibilité pour le Bloc québécois de forcer le gouvernement fédéral à réduire le nombre d'immigrants au Québec. Et j'avais demandé au Bloc québécois d'utiliser ce pouvoir pour exiger de réduire le nombre d'immigrants au Québec. Donc, c'était une situation complètement différente de celle qu'on vit aujourd'hui. Aujourd'hui, ben, c'est aux gens, justement, à la Chambre des commerces, à la Chambre des communes, un beau lapsus, à la Chambre des communes de décider comment ils vont voter dans les prochaines semaines, les prochains mois. C'est pas à moi à leur dire quoi faire. Il n'y a pas un enjeu comme il y avait sur l'immigration à l'époque.
We will now take questions from media on the phone line. When called upon, I ask that you please state your name, your outlet, and direct your question to one premier. You will be limited to one question only. I would also ask that you please make sure that your phone is not on mute. You will not be audible until your name is called. Today's first question is from Rob Buffman from CTV News.
Rob Buffman with CTV News. My question is for Premier Eby, and it relates to the news that we may hear Justin Trudeau is resigning. Jagmeet Singh just said a few minutes ago that he thinks Trudeau should resign, and nothing's off the table when it comes to his view on a non-confidence vote. I wanted to get your reaction as to how well received a federal election would be in the next few weeks in BC, given we've just come out of an election.
Thanks, Rob. The focus of myself and my colleagues along this table is the threat that's facing people in our respective provinces and territories, which is a very pressing and urgent threat to their jobs, their ability to pay the bills, and also a threat to Americans, to affordability for them, for their jobs. It's this threat of tariffs that occupied this table, even on a day when we saw a prominent resignation of a finance minister that I think many of us certainly had a good relationship with. I count myself among the premiers that did. Despite what's happening in Ottawa, we're focused on ensuring that we're the stable presence that's going to help Canada through this moment. And everyone here is committed to that. We have different perspectives, different political backgrounds. That is our strength. And we will continue to be strong for Canadians. If there's an election, if there's not an election, if someone resigns, if they don't resign in Ottawa, what matters to us is looking after our people in our provinces and looking after Canadians, and that's what we're going to do.
Next question is from John Hernandez from CBC News.
Just on that front, on Premier Eby, what was your initial reaction or thoughts upon hearing the news about Freeland, and how might that impact British Columbia?
I want to take a moment and join my colleagues here at the table in thanking Chrystia Freeland for her work for Canadians. I always enjoyed my interactions with her. I found her hardworking and dedicated to her job. She was always interested in hearing about the specific concerns of British Columbia, but many and have many frustrations with wanting to be heard better in Ottawa from the West Coast of the country. She was willing to hear even difficult conversations, so I appreciate that. So my first reaction was disappointment. She was a good contact for us. She was a good person to reach out to. But whoever the incoming finance minister is, I hope that that's a person that really understands the unique position of each of our provinces and territories, understands the need to engage with us on federal policies because they affect us differently. And a policy that appears neutral on its face may have dramatically different impacts on other provinces and territories. And so for the BC perspective, we want someone who understands BC. I'm sure all of my colleagues want someone who understands their respective jurisdictions as well.
Thank you. Next question.
Beatrice Vaisman, CP24. I notice all three Liberal premiers are sitting on one side of the table here. And Premier Holt, I know you've expressed differences between yourself and the Prime Minister before. I'm wondering if we can hear from you three specifically. Do you still have confidence in the Prime Minister, not only to lead this country, but to be the leader of the federal Liberal Party of Canada?
Look, the Prime Minister is duly elected. The Prime Minister has won several elections. This is his decision and his decision alone to make. He has earned the right to make that decision.
I would just echo what David just said. I think for us, as much as we come from a particular political view, today's conversations, again, we're really, what happens in Ottawa happens. I think it's a misfortunate situation that it's happening today. I think when you look at the calendar and you count out to January 20th, and you take into consideration what's in front of us for some disruption during holidays, I mean, we're in a very tight spot. And so I think for us, whatever happens in Ottawa, again, will happen. But we'll stay disciplined. Today was about a structured approach on how we will reach out to our counterparts. I have talked to folks in the U.S. today. They're watching what's happening. There's concern. They want to engage with us, and that will be the work we will do collectively as we fan out to do the work we need to do on behalf of Canadians.
Certainly, I'm interested in what's in the best interest of New Brunswickers as well as all Canadians. I think we need stability at the negotiating table as we face the kind of threat to the Canadian economy like we haven't seen in a long time. And the goal is to get rid of those 25% tariffs. We need to do that as a team, this team at this table, and we'll leverage every federal resource that's available to provide that kind of stability to make sure that regardless of elections or outcomes, Canadians, their jobs and their economy are protected in the face of the threat of the Trump administration. So that's what I'm focused on, to make sure that New Brunswickers and our economy is protected.
Hi, Cameron Ryan for CPAC. My question is to Premier Ford, but it applies to everyone here. And you said that you're very unified on a lot of the issues like NATO 2% and the border control. But given today's news that Chrystia Freeland has resigned, and given the precarious situation that the Liberals find themselves in a minority parliament, how confident are you that those resources that you need from the federal level to help with border security and NATO are going to get there in time to avoid these tariffs?
Well, thanks for the question. I'm confident in the premiers around this table that we'll make sure that the federal government steps up to the plate. They just can't shut down government. They have to keep moving government forward, make sure they meet their 2% NATO commitment, make sure that they support our military and proper funding and securing the border as well. We're there to step up and make sure we protect our country right across the board on all areas and economic areas as well. But we'll hold them accountable, I can promise you that. They can't just shut down the government. As chaotic as it is up there, you have a great team of premiers here making sure we fill in any gaps that there might be from the federal government.
And I might just say that this is also, policing is also a provincial responsibility. So in our province, we've got 7 or 8 civic police forces. We've got 1,400 RCMP officers. We've got nearly 1,000 sheriffs. We just announced dedicated teams to not only do fugitive apprehension, shut down drug houses, do surveillance, but also do border checks as well as a search for fentanyl. We will be hiring 51 new officers. We'll have dog sniffing capacity so that we can root out drugs. We'll be doing more commercial vehicle inspection at the border to augment border services. We have already engaged with the Canadian Border Services as well as our CMP to coordinate those efforts. I've already reached out to Governor Giannaforte in Montana so that we can coordinate cross-border. And I think that other provinces are doing the same. It would be helpful. We announced $29 million for this initiative. It'd be helpful if the federal government would assist with some of those costs, but we are acting even if they do not. And I think other premiers may have more to say on what they're doing in their own provinces.
I just say, with respect to the borders in particular, I don't think we can't subscribe to the Trump narrative that this is a unidirectional problem. Strengthening borders is good for Canadians. period, full stop. Should we be doing it? Yes, absolutely. But we shouldn't be doing it because President-elect called for it. We should be doing it because it's the right thing to do for Canadians. There is far more drugs coming from the United States into Canada than the other way around. It is important that we secure the borders for the protection, the security, and the sovereignty of a proud and strong Canada.
Hi, excuse me. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. Just on that front, I mean, I feel like the chaos in Ottawa, as you called it, Premier Ford, has really dominated the context of your meeting. We had a finance minister quit. We had a delayed financial economic statement. We don't even know who's delivering it. We don't know how the money's getting out. You say that they can't just shut the government down, but you must be worried now about President Trump seeing these news alerts coming up from New York Times and other places that Canada is in turmoil and just sitting back and thinking, well, there's my negotiating position. I mean, how can you have confidence in the federal government going forward to deal with the Trump administration now?
Well, again, you know, we've projected unity here. And if you look at it and break it down, you know, the real economic power lies with the territories and the provinces moving forward, and making sure that we hold the federal government accountable on the borders, on the NATO commitment as well. I have all the confidence in the world with the team that's sitting at this table that we're going to drive forward. We're going to be down in Washington in February, sending a really clear and strong message to all the governors, and then going back there again when Congress is sitting down with folks in the Congress and Senate, sending them a clear message. We need to work together. We're stronger together, and let's put this Fortress Can-Am together. That you know, if you look at it, we would have the strongest jurisdiction in the world if we were together, working together with the U.S. and Canada. No one would be able to touch us anywhere in the world.
I think, Doug, I could just cut in because the premise to a lot of these questions today, obviously, rightfully so, are about what's happening in Ottawa, but we didn't spend a great deal of time talking about Chrystia Freeland at our table this morning. We did talk a lot about border security. We talked a lot about what we need to do to fight this unfair assault that is the potential of 25% tariffs. I think it's important for all of us. I know we're in a room of people who follow politics for a living, and this is like the Super Bowl and the Stanley Cup all on the same day. I understand that, but I think we need to tap the brakes here a little bit, and just that I had a great relationship with Chrystia Freeland. She did a wonderful job, but she is one person. Canada is much more than one person. It's much more than a collective of people. There's a stability, there's a consistency to us that we need to lean into here, and that's what will serve us the best as we negotiate our way through this most current situation that we're dealing with the United States. I really do think that, I know we live in this immediate world now and everything seems chaotic, but if you look to the south of the border, chaos seems to rule the day down there every day of the week. We do have the president-elect who's trying to get his cabinet individuals passed through the process. They have a lot on their plate down there as well. So I think it's important for us to tap the brakes and look at this from a 30,000-foot level. We have a lot going for us here. We have a really good story to tell. We have a really good case to put forward. And there are a lot of people working on this, from the Premier's tables, from all of our staffs, from all of the individual businesses we deal with across the country, with our counterparts in the U.S. And there's a lot more going on than just what might be captivating our attention in Ottawa today.
This will be the last question.
It may look the logic. You said that you're a united front as the province is, but do you have faith in Trudeau to lead you and the country through the tariff challenge?
Was that for me?
Yeah. Everyone.
I have faith in the premiers. That's who I have faith in. We have a great group of premiers. We're going to move this country forward. We have a very strong economic message, and we have to build on our strengths when we're negotiating with the United States. And again, I just want to thank all the premiers for coming by today. We're going to have frequent meetings. We're going to have frequent meetings with the federal government and with our counterparts in the U.S. And again, I want to thank each and every one of them for coming by. I'm very, very fortunate. And I just want a message to the Canadians. You have a strong group of premiers representing you. We're going to continue forging forward. We're going to make sure that we have a strong economy and strong health care and make sure that we protect the borders. Folks, you're in good hands with these premiers. I want to thank you and may God bless the people of Canada. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Merci de vous adjoindre à nous.